Anyone who's seen any of my content over the last couple of days has noticed there is a focus on the issue of net neutrality, which is currently under siege by the FCC with their upcoming December 12th vote that is likely to scrap the measure that allows for cable, or rather service providers, to not have bias in terms of data and mess with sites that they have some negative opinion of, or for the sake of just doing something that promotes their own image or denigrates the success of somewhere else. And as I was sitting here speaking with another user whose name I'm forgetting at this point, which is unfortunate because he brought up something that was very smart, I thought about what he said, which was that this continued because you have a lot of people who are going to be impacted by this. Only 13% of Americans not using the internet would signify that. This proves, probably more than any other issue, that there are just individuals that no matter what happens, they will not learn or attempt to become sophisticated enough on an issue to take a stance. Now, it's one thing to have ignorance about something. 3 years ago, I didn't know most American presidents. And as a result of that, I decided to go and read and study on it for a couple of months, and I would say that the effort paid off. This was all information that was learned in a relatively, I guess, short amount of time, because when you take the time to go and notice something, generally it's not that consuming. And we're talking about multiple parts of American history in the case of that. With this, it's just knowing what a term means and how it's going to be impacted by a particular group of people who have the power to mess with it. Now, again, not knowing this is not inherently bad. We scramble and go online all the time. We don't think about, oh, this is the way because of that. It's just that's the way we are as humans. But what is troubling is when people actively know they're unaware of something and they purposely go out of their way to not become aware of it. I've sat on many discussions with people I know who use it. Yeah, here it is. I think it was Envoy that mentioned this era of laziness. I've sat on here with many people that I've spoken with that use the internet very frequently, and they always seem to turn a deaf ear to just asking, "What is this about? Well, how do you navigate this? What are you referring to?" They'll hear the term over and over. They'll know it's in the news, but there's not that attempt to become acquainted with what's at stake here, which is effectively freedom of speech and granting powers to those who will likely abuse it. All we have is their word that they won't do anything wrong, which is, and I don't, to my knowledge, there's no way of punishing them for doing something wrong, other than not granting them those powers in the first place, which we had under the Obama administration's regulations. Okay, so let me see what someone said. Okay, Simply Deep 1985 says, I can ask, what's your content about? The multiple things. Okay, what else is here? Yeah, I don't know who that person is either. And maybe if this were just a regular, general discussion, I wouldn't be as bothered, but I would think of this as being centered around one particular issue. But really, where do we go from here as not just a society, but people? Do we continue to ignore the fact that there are many who just purposely choose not to know about this? Or do we try to educate them? Do we shame them into... think about it. One of the reasons people don't typically go out, I don't know, nude, for example, is because it is frowned upon and practically against the law, or is against the law, rather. But that shows you, because of human involvement with something else, it's made others to where they follow the guideline of at least being knowledgeable of, yeah, let's not go out and expose ourselves. We have everything at our disposal in the sense that we have information right in our hands in the version of smartphones. people don't need to leave their houses as much. Yeah, but that's the case I'm making. This isn't. Let's go back. Imagine if we were still living in the 40s. You had no internet. Um, TVs that weren't up to date as they are now, and the closest place you could go to get information was a library. And now what we've seen is all the information in those books. It's all online, or at least the overwhelming majority of it is, and people can just sit there for an hour, for 2 hours, learn a bunch of stuff that they would have had to have gone and checked out in various places. And now what do they do with it? Nothing. And that's kind of the way I was. For years I could have gone and looked up any of that political stuff. I just didn't have an interest in it up until that point. So I'm saying you have to want it to know it. Because as much as we give people choice to just kind of see, something that needs to be understood is that people are not going to learn things on average that they don't need to learn to just sustain the basic way of life. And you think about people learning how to do taxes. If it weren't a requirement by the government, how many people would be trying to learn how to do that? If people had free houses, how many of them would be trying to get a job? Just really, there's always an incentive to do something, and for them, there's no incentive to learn about this stuff. And we, as individuals, theoretically could say, okay, well, we'll just discuss this and leave them to where they're confused and don't know anything. But other than that, they'll, keep being all right with just not knowing this, and it's not okay. Especially when this impacts this many people and everyone online. Okay, Envoy says, I don't think people need to know what is this, of or how it works, but there should be a basic understanding which a lot of people sorely lack. I think it was Fox News that did their fake news segment. No, it was Kimmel, the host. He did a fake news segment where they said FDR just died, and people were thinking that believe that to be the case, and it was supposed to be this commentary on how we as a collective society just don't know certain things anymore. And it was amusing but also depressing in a sense, because you get so used to just knowing things that when you find out someone else doesn't, especially if they're of a certain age, it gets kind of, you get this feeling of just annoyance in a way. Hope he's saying something. So, one other major facet of this is that I don't want to turn it into a shaming of people that don't know this, because it's fine to admit you don't understand or don't know something. But what separates those who are okay from not knowing it and those who aren't okay are those who choose purposely to stick their fingers in their ears and go, no, 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 and not bother at all to try and gain some comprehension. That's what the issue's been about for this entire time. I don't care if someone doesn't know about this. I'll go and say it. I had a person come in here, say, what is net neutrality? I explained to them what it was. Stick their hands in the sand, hands in their ears, turn off the volume, put it on mute. They'll mute the video after I start saying something they don't like. That's the equivalent of what is going on here with this issue, where they're actively choosing to just say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be informed. So I'm disgusted by it. Not the people not knowing, but people purposely going out of their way not to know. And because I give abridged versions of most things I know, I try to shorten it to a few sentences. And they won't even try to learn that. This isn't me giving you a comprehensive history, but it's a brief overview. Yeah, we're definitely focusing on that. I'm just, this is, again, understand, Jack Mc23. This is me kind of keeping this the center focus, because this is the big issue of the next 2 weeks. Just every day there will be something about this. To highlight the fact that you can't play around with people's freedom and then expect to just put it under the curb, or sweep it under the rug, rather. And I really hope that in keeping this the main focus, people don't slip up for a day or two and go, "Oh yeah, that's still happening." So that's my perspective on why I'm doing this. So I'll have something else out tomorrow. Um, our soccer kick us under the bus. The reluctant dragon. I'll have something else up tomorrow on this same topic and maybe another discussion on some other story. We'll see as time passes. So thank you for watching. Have a good day.